Hey, welcome. Hi. Haven't seen you on a podcast in a while.
Yeah, you found other co-hosts, didn't you?
Much better ones, by the way.
I know.
Yeah.
I will happily get bumped out by your daughter anytime.
I think I may just have other people. It might be the Jack shit show. Is that okay? Put you in parentheses now?
That is so apropos. I don't even know what to
Yeah,
say.
it is bad, isn't it? I'm a shit show. You're not really the shit show in this relationship. I am, right?
Well, it's,
Honestly,
self-awareness is the first step towards
divorce.
It's fill in the blank day.
Taking off my break.
It doesn't come up.
Take out
It
the
is-
whole.
it is-
Take out the whole.
It's embedded into your
Look,
flesh.
What? It's still there. What the hell?
Okay, let's stop with the magic tricks. What are we doing today?
Hey, so welcome home. I've been gone for 2 weeks basically, and then was interviewing Key. That podcast posted. Mm-hmm. We've got a special guest today. Her name's Molly Dunn. Her partner Katie's going to be on with us. They are from here originally.
Yes, I first met Molly through her parents. I sold her parents' house, and then I helped Molly and her wife buy a house in Milwaukee, and then they sold and moved and carried on, and we just reconnected, and wow, she's up to some fabulous life adventure stuff and business ventures. And
Started her own coaching and health and fitness and mental health and physical fitness and diet and all that stuff. She'll talk about her skills and what her company's all about. And then her partner Katie's going to come on and talk about their life. In particular, they left the U.S. and they're now living abroad in Spain and have been there since 2020, I believe, and are enjoying the shit out of themselves. So we're going to talk about what that's like as well. Right?
Lots of interesting topics to talk about. So that's it. Yeah.
So without further ado, we're going to cut over to the interview with Molly and
Katie. Yeah.
All right. See you in a little bit. What was...
It's my signature sign.
Is it? Is your signature thing now? Kaboom. Pow. It's the Jack
and Kathy
show.
Shit show.
And there we go.
Yeah,
okay, I think if
Okay. I love it. No, I just discovered cortados. There's a place out in Tosa on North Avenue that makes this incredible cortado that has real maple syrup in it, and then they top it with a little rock salt. Oh my gosh.
Very
so
Wisconsin.
Delicious. Yeah, so delicious.
We are good at
but
the
they're
sweet
dangerous.
and salty.
Yes.
In all
It's
the
a-
ways.
Yeah, it's a big boost of caffeine. So I just finished one cortado. I'm not going for a second. So bear with me if I start rambling or touching buttons, Jack.
Yeah, just don't touch anything. I
Yeah.
prefer cocaine in the morning. That's my choice.
Yeah, that's effective.
Stimulant. So I apologize.
Well, cocaine probably won't be touched by the tariffs. That's the good news.
Oh, there you go.
Good thing. And we are diving
Silver
right in.
lining.
Welcome to Molly and Katie. And this is Politics Today with Jack and Kathy.
Oh, we could end up on that road.
How this is just going to just unfold in a certain way, which I'm excited about, by the way. Hope you hear that.
Yeah.
In the just so everyone who's listened to podcasts knows, which is 4 people. We were talking about global warming and how it isn't affecting Wisconsin. So we're excited about that. All right. So we've got 2 wonderful guests with us. Kathy, why don't you do the formal introductions?
So Molly and
Without
Katie.
touching anything.
Yeah, without touching
Thank
anything,
you.
without touching any equipment. Molly and Katie, thank you for being with us. You guys, we were just about to reminisce on this. Feels like yesterday, but it was probably a good 6 or so years ago. Molly, I helped your parents sell their home in Wisconsin. And then you guys at that time were living here and bought a home and then sold it. And you moved out of state. And I really hadn't connected with you in a few years because just you guys had moved away and, life carries on. So, and then Molly, you reached out and you have this wonderful new business that you've started. And we had a conversation. It was like, boom, so glad to see your face again. Introduced you to Jack, and one thing led to another. And we asked you to be guests on our podcast. So many topics to talk about with you guys. But I want to first start with Molly. You started a business called Your Why Health, and I want to hear a little bit more about this because Jack and I, this is a relationship podcast, but we also cover many different things. And one of the things that certainly Jack and I have talked about is how we want to, having just found each other in life, we want to maximize our time together. And a huge part of that is our health moving forward. And one of the things that actually attracted me to Jack when I saw him we met on a dating app.
Did he have a shirt on?
What's that?
I didn't have my shirt on when I met her. Correct. I was holding a fish.
Now it's all adding up now, Kathy. I knew it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Held a fish up on a boat.
Exactly. Or it was one of those camera angles where they're holding the camera down low, taking a picture of themselves in all their glory.
I did this
How
kind
low?
of little,
How low?
Yes,
No, okay.
exactly.
All right.
Right?
Exactly. Thank you.
But no, one of the pictures he had was him hiking. And I was like, okay, outdoor guy. You just imagine, I wanted a partner that had a similar outlook on lifestyle and activity. And so, yeah, the mental health, the physical health as we move forward in life is the root of everything. So Molly, just if I can, tell me a little bit more about your journey to starting this business for yourself.
Yeah. So Your Why Health is my health coaching business. And for those of you that don't know, health coaching is relatively new. It started in 2017, about the time that I met Kathy. That's when it officially entered the US healthcare system. And it's meant to fill a much needed gap. And that is helping people nourish or build healthy habits into their life around nutrition and sleep, de-stressing, change skills. So we're specialists in health behavior change. And I started Your Why Health. The moment that probably inspired me to do it was when my neighbor asked me if I was pregnant. When I definitely wasn't.
Oh no. Was it a dude that asked it?
It was actually just a very lovely Catalan woman who lives next door. Yeah. Bless her heart. Okay.
And unfortunately, we knew enough Spanish to know what she was asking.
Yeah, my Spanish is pretty terrible, but I understood that. And I mean, she was mortified. She's very sweet.
Yeah.
And to give you a little more context about that, a couple weeks before that, I had been hospitalized for 2 weeks and diagnosed with Crohn's disease after not being believed by doctors for a long time. But that's a different story. Yeah. And so I was on steroids, which made me bloated and irritable.
Yeah.
I didn't notice.
Yeah, Katie didn't notice at all. No, I was a terror to live with.
Are you being facetious, Katie?
A little bit. I could notice just sometimes that I thought I was just breathing too loud.
That's accurate.
Yes.
And I, yeah.
That's awesome.
Holy crap.
But
I was on them for like at least 7 months. It was a very long time to be on prednisone. I was on prednisone. And I wasn't allowed to eat healthy. I wasn't allowed to eat fiber vegetables for a long time, and I wasn't able to exercise. So I had to work my way back up.
The doctors instructed you just eat things that move straight through your system that don't stop. Right.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And they didn't. So that's great.
Yeah.
And it wasn't so much the fact that my neighbor asked me if I was pregnant. It was how I reacted to it. So I didn't freak out. I didn't have a shame meltdown. I didn't go and try to eat healthy immediately or work out a lot because that would have made me more sick. And I'm still a human being. I don't care how far along you are in your body positivity, body neutrality journey. Like somebody asking you that is going to affect you. So I did have a little cry.
Very fair. Yeah.
And then I moved on, and I felt confident that I was going to be okay. I knew I had the tools in my toolbox to recover my health when my body was ready. And the reason that I was going to be okay, or that I was confident that I was going to be okay, was because I had seen a health coach years prior. And that health coach had helped me create my own very personal toolbox of habits that was there for me when I was ready. And I wanted to be able to be that person for other people. I wanted to be able to give that gift to other people and be a health coach myself.
That's fantastic. That's awesome. And it is such a common story where we are driven to our calling by our own personal experiences. And what a gift now that neighbor, you know, said that to you, because it really was the impetus for you having a different perspective. And yes, you had that cry, you had that breakdown, but you picked yourself up and you wanted to make it different, right? And it's because of your personal knowledge that you can speak so well to your clients, right? So
Absolutely.
I love that. And did you want to?
No, keep going. You're rolling.
So
This cortado, I've never seen Kathy this talkative in my life. Never.
So tell me,
Mainline
tell
caffeine.
me, is there a with the clients you work for, is there a common challenge? Is there a common theme that you find your clients present to you that you're starting to see as your business moves along?
Yeah. So I'd say when people come to me, they're probably in one of three health modes. That's what I call it, health modes. And we've all probably found ourselves in each of these at one time or another. The first one probably sounds most familiar, and that's survival mode. So this is when health is completely taken a back seat because you're just trying to get from one day to the next. This comes with the major life stressors. So losing a loved one, divorce, moving, major illnesses, injury, job loss. Yep. A lot of us can check a lot of those boxes. And it doesn't always actually, the stressors don't always have to be negative. It could be a big positive thing that you wanted for a while, but it's still a big change nonetheless. And it's still therefore stressful on our lives.
100%. Yep.
If I could interject real quickly, my son, the youngest, we have 5 between us. My youngest has wanted to move to Nashville. He's a musician. Since he graduated college a little less than a year ago, and got a full-time job in his career, and their offices are in Nashville, so he gets to do both. And he said he's been having a week-long of, ever hear of this? Never heard of this before. Sunday scaries, which apparently is a thing that my kids described to me. I never had it growing up. It was just called going to work. But he said he truly said he had a week long of Sunday scaries because he couldn't believe that all of this is lining up for him, right? So it's, to your point, it's not always about bad things. It's sometimes you get what you want, and then it's, holy cow, is this right for me, or whatever he's going through right now. But I get that too. It's neat. It's a neat way to juxtapose. It's not always negative.
Yeah. When I listen to you, I can flash back to my own personal thing where I had left a marriage, and hardest thing for me ever to do, and to imagine unraveling my family unit as I knew it and having my kids affected. That was huge in my immediate family. And yet I knew it was right for me, right? It took probably 10 years for me to make the move. So not a quick thing, a very slow moving thing. And then I find myself finally in a place of having made that decision, and my cortisol levels are out of control. I even had blood work done. I was exhausted, but yet not sleeping, and just started a new career, and just the stressors were out of control. And yet I was doing exactly what I had planned to do, which is kind of what I hear you saying, is like, it's not always some terrible, tragic thing you didn't plan on. Sometimes it is that life choice that is right for you, that, my gosh, you find yourself at this, this stressful place and unhealthy. So
yeah, and those are great examples. and very common. And for example, for me, I've seen a health coach at 4 different times of my life, and not consecutively.
Yeah.
And each of those were when I had a big transition. So whether it was moving to a different country, which I've done multiple times now, or a city, or a career shift, those big shifts are often when the extra support can be helpful. That's the survival mode, which we all can speak to. And the second mode, which we've probably all found ourselves into, is the fad health mode.
Fad, FAD.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not FAT.
Yes, fad.
We've been there too. All good.
Yeah. Right.
And that's when you saw something that worked for somebody else, whether it's from social media, a friend, a partner, and you're trying this diet or that workout routine for yourself. I've got clients who come to me after trying certain eating styles or diets, like the Whole30, Mediterranean, paleo, vegan, vegetarianism, carnivore, you name it. And it's not working for them, or it wasn't sustainable for them. Like they tried it for a little bit, but then they couldn't keep it going. And the same thing goes for workout trends. So step challenges, 30-day workout challenges, things like that. And then the third mode is the clean health mode. And if I had to summarize this one in one word, it'd probably be perfectionist. So you're trying to follow a strict nutrition and exercise routine. This is where people often think they want or need to be in order to be healthy. As an athlete in undergrad, this is where often I tried to force myself to be most of the time. And this is also where a lot of my clients find themselves. And this clean health mode often leads to yo-yoing, or trying something that just feels very restrictive, only to at least feel like you fell off the wagon. Most people really haven't.
Right. And that sounds like, in a way, the clients are setting themselves up, and probably not even realizing how they're setting themselves up for failure. Like when you don't allow yourself to have, I know Jack doesn't like the word balance necessarily, but a little bit of balance where, we're making those healthy choices the majority of the time. And every now and again you do, or, you might skip your workout or your walk that morning because you just feel like staying in bed or whatever it is, allow yourself to be a mere mortal and not feel like you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater if you have a supposed misstep, is that kind of what you're saying? Am I tracking
exactly correctly? Yeah.
Or even in my opinion is like, you're healthy but you're miserable, right? You're always hungry. And I think people see it as like a purification ritual, working out or eating right or something. It's like our spirituality of like, this is right, this is wrong. We have to expel the bad parts and be disciplined, and a fear of pleasure and joy. And so, I've seen that a lot with your work, is just like understanding that pleasure is part of health.
Yeah. And it's not black and white.
Yeah. That's powerful. I'm sure there are many of us that don't feel we deserve that, right? I can start to see all these components that factor into this, and why your approach is not just about eat this, don't eat that, do this, but that mental health behind it all. And I guess that's why you called it your why. What is driving you? What is your personal motivation behind wanting to pursue your own health?
Exactly. That's one of the tools is knowing your why, and behind what your health goal is. So most of us, that there's something deeper than I just want to have more energy, or I just want to feel better. There's or some people want to improve their body composition, things like that. That's usually not the end goal. And it's not necessarily a foolproof thing. I do think knowing your why can sometimes be used in a little bit of a toxic positivity sense, like making people stay in something that may not actually be healthy for them.
Mm.
But it's definitely one of the tools that is helpful in your toolbox to understand why you're doing this. Like, for example, I've got a client whose why is to be able to play with his newborn son and to watch him grow up.
That's a biggie.
And yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And the to answer your question for how do I help people through these challenges, where I try to help clients get to is what I call resilient health mode. And that's where you're confident in creating change in your own life. You adapt evidence-based health habits to your unique life, your unique body, even as life changes.
Yeah.
And just a quick summary of how I do that would be one, you need to be a good changer. In other words, to develop change skills. This is one that people often skip over and go straight into number two, which is you need to build your habit toolbox. In other words, follow research-based methods for your unique health goals in your body, in your life. And three, you need to integrate these habits wisely. So this is another one. I'd say most people end up skipping 1 and 3 here. So there's a really cool body of research about how to nurture habits into your life. Spoiler alert, it's not by forcing yourself to do things or shoving these habits down your throat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk to us about that first one, because I'm most intrigued by number one. And this is going to sound really self-serving. I feel I've been born with a gift of a switch. Meaning the moment I go, I don't want to do this, or I do want to do that. Kathy doesn't like when I often snap because it just gives, I'm surprised she's like shuddering. But I'd
She
like
already
to
is.
talk about that.
It's the caffeine. She's already here.
Yeah.
It is.
Trust me. I've never, this is really funny right now. I wish there was snow outside that we could shovel, because she's like, that first piece, I have to admit, is something that I struggle with in others. Like, for example, my kids. I had one child that struggled with substance abuse for a while, and my whole thing was just shut it off. Right? My brain went to, well, just shut that off, because Kathy, I think Kathy can attest to this. The moment I click that switch, it's a freight train. And I love that you said it's not just about the tools and blah, blah, blah. It's convincing I guess is the right way to say this, Molly. It's convincing yourself that switch exists. Or talk to me more about that number one, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing from what you're saying is something I can relate to. I'd say I also have a switch.
Yeah.
What did you call it? A freight train? Was that?
Right. Molly, can't wait to see you in Spain, by the way. Let's go down. Run over some people. Do it our way, damn it.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I am a full-blown Taurus. So the switch, that's one of your strengths. That's some coaches would call that one of your superpowers. And there's, like all of our strengths, there's pros and cons to it. I know you have a coaching background, so you're familiar with this. Mm-hmm. And that switch enables us to do amazing things, to work really hard and achieve accolades, or our career goals, our relationship goals. On the flip side of that, it usually has us approaching everything as black and white. And I think, I'll speak for myself personally, where that becomes especially difficult is how I treat myself. And then even how I would treat other people, like expecting other people to be able to just flip a switch.
Yep.
And I think that our nervous systems respond very differently to external rules or somebody telling you what to do versus feeling like you're making a choice. And our nervous systems are very unique to each of us. Like we have the same machinery, but how it's working is very much influenced by how we were raised and all of our life experiences, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that's where learning to allow people to be themselves and make their own choices can be really powerful. And that's something that, for me as a coach, has definitely taken training. Go ahead.
Oh, no. No, it's interesting to hear from the freight train. I'm not going to call her that after this podcast. As somebody who's definitely more of a dial, like a knob than a switch. And for me, I mean, that's reflected in coming over to Spain, right? I was like, kind of gradually, I was the one who kind of said, oh, things are going bad in the US kind of thing. And then she was like, okay, we're going. Whoa.
I think I'm the Katie in this relationship. And he's the Molly.
Yeah,
say you need.
If I could
say you need.
Katie, if I could just, I really want to have you continue saying what you're saying. We have truly thought about an EU opportunity because of Kathy's Luxembourg citizenship opens so many more doors than without. And very good. And I'm a big fan of the universe. So Molly, while you're a Taurus, I'm all Sag, which is don't give a shit, right? Sagittarius just like, fuck it, let's go. And we ran into some friends of ours, and then just in small talk learned that he's from Spain. His mother lived there, and him and his partner are going to be moving to Spain anyway, and they're coming over next week. And the whole topic is, when can we take a vacation, go to Spain to figure out a place? And my exact words to Kathy, she's like, yeah, it'd be good to check it out. And I went, I'm not checking out shit. We're moving. This isn't one of those, I wonder what it looks like. We're committing to this and we'll figure it out.
I'm nibbling off the corner and going, all right.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. I think I'll have another bite. Okay.
Exactly.
But getting back to it, Katie, I love that analogy of a dial. I think that's fantastic. So sorry for interrupting. If you don't mind going back.
No, you're fine. I was just going to say what really spoke to me, what helped me understand what you're saying about what you listed as number one with the change skill is change being a muscle that you work out and you practice, and it's a skill. So it's something you can learn, and it's something you can get better at. And a coach can help, a team can help. And so you start, and with all of her clients, she starts with find 1 5-minute. I mean, you can explain it better than I can. That's why she's the coach.
No, I like this.
But this really helped me understand.
Where do you begin?
Again,
this is perfect.
And not to keep belaboring this, when I met Kathy, one of the things I say all the time on this podcast was that I kept dating similar people. And so before I went out with Kathy, I told myself, if you want something to be different, you're the only common denominator. You have to change. So approach this date differently than you've done before. It's that Seinfeld episode with George, right? Where, have you ever seen that one where he's going to do everything the opposite? So I'd love to hear your how, right? I get the why piece that is intimate to me. So keep going on this.
Where you start.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it really does start. I mean, she has all of her clients start with this, so go for it.
Love it.
I do a year-long program. At the beginning, it's the first month or so is similar from client to client, and then the rest of it, it's very client-centered. I'd say more that and individualized. The client is very much in the driver's seat, and I may be in the car. And so I feel like one way to maybe ask this is if you're feeling stuck, whether that's for your personal life or your professional life, or you feel stuck in a relationship with somebody else. And by that, I mean, I don't necessarily mean like in a relationship, but you're talking about the relationship with your son. So if you're feeling stuck, this is very common. This is part of the human experience. And for you, for example, the switch, I also have a switch. It's very easy to flip on and off until somebody wants us to flip it in a direction that we don't want to go. So that's where it's like, yeah, I have a switch that I can turn on and off, but I get to turn it on. And so
right.
that's where I
I
can
love
feel
that.
a lot of resistance for myself. So to get unstuck, and it's going back to this idea of practicing change as a skill in and of itself. So this is one of my favorite habits to do with clients, and it's called a 5-minute action. So each day, do something different than you would normally do for 5 minutes or even 1 minute. So whatever the goal is, I usually like to somehow picture what that dial is for each habit. So for the 5-minute action, I have clients be like, well, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Did you do 5 or more minutes, something different? Then you give yourself a 5, a 4, 3, 2, 1. All of that counts as improvement. And this can be applied to anything. And that's the beauty of this habit in particular. So it could be adding 5 minutes to a walk that you already do. It could be extending your meal time by 5 minutes so that you eat a little slower. You go to bed 5 minutes earlier. You lie on the floor for 5 minutes because that can be grounding for some people's nervous systems. So this can help you strengthen your change muscles, and also help you become more explorative and approaching the habit building process in a more creative or playful way, like it's a sandbox. It's its own mini experiment in your life.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's part
Love
of
it.
the whole research-based thing is like, it's not just about the latest medical research and all that she knows everything about, but also treating your life as an experiment, as like, okay, I did 5 minutes of meditation. That did not work for me. I did not like it. I'm going to go, ride my motor. She has a client that we don't talk about her clients, but there's one or two that I know outside of it.
Sure.
And they, want to go drive their motorcycle for 5 minutes, and that's how they distress. So it's also just coming to a place of, again, practicing your change muscles of like seeing how it worked for you. And, maybe you change it, maybe you don't, not going full into, I'm going to do 100 push-up challenge and, start,
I think the correlation to a muscle is so important. You can't do 100 sit-ups and have suddenly ab muscles to brag about, right? So it is a slow build, and it is a rewiring of certain habits, right? For positive change within yourself. And that can be a slow process of relearning that and building that muscle up. That makes perfect sense. I love that.
Yeah, I'm
and I
love
think
that.
I think
I was
it's
going to say,
about
go ahead. Sorry, go ahead, Katie. You go. No,
just another way she talks about it with building a muscle is like with resistance. You do resistance training, and the same thing is, I think a lot of people, when they start feeling resistance about something that could make them healthier, they like push it away and either avoid it or go all in on it and burn out. But what she teaches her clients with the change muscle is like, acknowledge the resistance, see if you want to work with it or move on, like what she's saying about go to a different habit. So if you really hate eating vegetables and you're actually ashamed that you're an adult and you hate eating vegetables, instead of like hammering on that, recognize the resistance, say that's okay. Instead, I'm going to focus on, going to sleep 10 minutes earlier. And eventually going to sleep 10 minutes earlier helps you make better choices, not crave carbs as much, that kind of stuff.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You go.
I was just gonna say, this is where if I'd like just another actionable item for anybody listening would be to really give yourself permission to focus on one thing at a time. Because even though you're doing one thing at a time, any of these habits, whether it's with nutrition or movement, sleep, de-stressing, change skills, working on any one of these tends to have a positive impact on the others. So if you improve your sleep, that tends to help your metabolism, or you tend to make more nourishing choices. And there's also the reverse has been shown in research, where if you nourish yourself with whole foods and while still letting yourself have pleasurable foods, that can help you sleep better. So that's where it's like, while you're focusing on one thing, you actually are working on a lot of things by focusing on one thing. There's a lot of paradoxes in health. That's kind of one of them.
Sure, it makes sense. And doing that one thing and feeling the rewards of that one thing in other places in your life starts to make you feel empowered, right?
Mhm.
Exactly.
It's like, okay, I'm doing this. I'm making this positive change,
Yeah.
whether it's, I ate one cookie instead of a whole sleeve of cookies, or I
By the way,
did
she's
go to bed
referencing
early.
the
or,
fact that we had Girl Scout cookies recently, and that's exactly
Oh,
what
it's
I
Girl
did.
Scout cookie season. Absolutely.
So how do we
Yes.
change Kathy's habit of picking on me and my food habits?
It's all right, babe. Shamrock shakes are good. Shamrock shake season. You
If-
got to
if
have
I
a
c-
shamrock shake.
I do want to thank you for letting me interrupt you. I do want to say also that I appreciate the exploration statement. Recently with my son with his Sunday scaries for a week. Not sure if you've ever seen the movie Madagascar, but in there the penguins want to escape the zoo because they want to get to Antarctica because that's their home. So they commandeer a ship, they get down there and they're standing in the ice cold and they're like, this sucks. And realize that they're better off going to the island and partying. And I told my son, be in explore mode all the time, because you may get there and it's phenomenal. You may get there and it's terrible. And so what? Always have the belief in yourself that you've got the option to leave. I mean, I want to live in Colorado forever and a day. And I finally got out there a few years ago before I met Kathy. And within the first 3 or 4 months or 3 or 4 weeks of being there, excuse me, I went, this is not what I thought it was going to be. I didn't view it as a bad thing. I had to see it, right?
Absolutely.
Living with no regrets, not even one letter.
Absolutely. Yeah. As people who moved from Wisconsin to Denver and then
Twice.
Oh, you did that too.
well, yeah. And then
Well, let's do this. If it's okay if we do this now, I want to still talk more about your business stuff, and but I'd like to take a quick break here and talk about these moves you've made, because you're a case study in how to make change happen, right? So I'd like you not only to share
whether you want to be or not.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah,
So we're going to take what's that?
We're a case, a basket case, maybe more.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, let's take a quick break here. When we come back, we'll jump into some of the changes you guys have actually made for yourselves, and upsides, downsides of all those things. Okay. So we will be right. Awesome. We'll be right back. Hey, it's Jack from the Jack and Kathy Shit Show.
And I'm Kathy. If you've ever wondered how Jack and I stay connected,
It's definitely not my cooking.
correct. It's the Skin Deep. They're the ultimate resource for meaningful connection, with products like the And card decks, interactive journals, and conversation starter kits for families, couples, and friends.
And don't forget their YouTube channel full of raw, honest conversations with real people. It's inspiring and a great reminder that we're all just trying to figure it out.
As fans of the Shit Show, commonly known as shitheads, you get something special. Go to theskindeep.com/shitshow and
Easy
use
for you to say.
Shit Show at checkout to get 15% off everything.
That's right, 15% off their incredible products just for you, our fellow shitheads. Whether you're deepening connections with your partner, your friends, or gearing up for that in-law dinner, they've got you covered.
So check out theskindeep.com/shitshow, use code SHITSHOW, and start talking it out. Who knows, you might even enjoy it.
The Skin Deep, making connection less awkward, one question at a time. All right, we're back. So welcome back. And then we were talking about change. And you guys started to mention the fact that you actually lived in Colorado as well. Did not know that, because I naturally just presumed here and then Spain. So talk to us about your own personal changes, things you've endured. the impact it had on your relationship, on you and yourselves individually. We've talked about switches and dials, so I had to believe there was some moments of what are you doing's going on and all that kind of stuff. So
Just
whoops.
moments.
So
Few
anyway,
and far between.
Couple.
yeah. So
moments.
roll there if you don't mind.
You want to roll or you want me to roll?
Let's have you roll with your version.
Yeah, which version do you want? The true one or the fun one?
Whoa.
No.
Wow.
We've moved 14 times.
Oh,
Some within the same city, but we met in graduate school at the University of Oxford in England. And then we were in DC. DC, we moved 3 or 4 times in a short amount of time.
Yeah, we had bad landlords, which is very common in very expensive cities where you're trying to live.
Yeah, like major home apartment defects and
flooding,
unlivable situations, very large holes in gas pipes and
that they don't believe.
Yeah.
And then they close off the entire building once they do finally
bring in the little beep machine, and it's like boo 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 boo.
Yeah, as soon as I open the door.
Yeah. So then we went from DC.
Well, we don't have to. I don't think we have to give them the whole.
Okay. Well, yeah, we moved a lot. Then we've ended up in DC, Denver, Milwaukee, Atlanta.
Well, Atlanta, you were there for a hot minute. So fast forward. Let's fast forward, right?
Okay.
So we shout out to Milwaukee. We lived in Milwaukee. Molly's from Mequon. I learned all about that. I'm from Tennessee. I'm from the South. But we made the decision. So Molly always wanted to go back and not live in America, wherever not America. I wanted to go back. And by going back, I mean, when we were in grad school, we met. I want to go back, live in the US. So we did that for a while, but she always had one foot out the door. Yeah. Then, I was working in politics. She worked in politics for a little bit, but I very clearly saw what was coming. Well, I shouldn't say clearly. I thought it was a possibility. I'm not big into the fruitfulness of political punditry and forecasting, that kind of stuff. But I did see that there kind of is no left in America. Well, not kind of. I mean, it's been brutally destroyed and
with any power.
Yeah. So
I'm gonna interrupt here and just give a little important context to this.
Oh boy.
Well, so Katie's from Knoxville, Tennessee, and she was raised in a very political family. Her dad was a conservative Republican politician, a state Republican he was in office for almost 30 years. And so she grew up working on his campaigns. And
I did a radio spot actually when I was about 5 or 6. So
no way.
You would never know. Well, just vote for my dad, Bill Dunn. Mr. Stan Pickering is his treasurer. Did the little disclaimer. So really, I was born for radio, for podcasting.
Yeah.
I cried a lot when I did that. Probably.
Yeah. Okay. So
okay.
So Katie.
Okay. So I guess what you're getting at is like pretty clear view of maybe both ends of this.
Yeah. I mean,
this is threat.
This is one thing that I actually really love. It was one of the first things I loved about Katie when I learned, or I first met her in college, and it was hearing about her background and she was raised by a loving family. Like it's clear, like she's a very lovely person, and this is something that I was not very good at myself. And that's talking to people with very different viewpoints than I have. Katie was raised and loved by people who now she has very different viewpoints from, but that wasn't always the case. But it always made her very good at talking to anybody and listening to anybody. And that's
which I don't do anymore, in fact, because I do think there's,
all right.
I don't
because there's boundaries that we've set and learned over time in terms of what was best for us. But one thing that you've taught me is that love should be big enough for people to move around in. And what I like about that is that it's still pictures love as this space, and so there's still a boundary there. Like, you don't want to do things that end up harming yourself or other people, but can we give people like a certain amount of grace that is good for them to grow and for yourself, and
Yeah,
so-
love is big enough to move around, and even moving to Spain. Do you see that segue right back?
Nice.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Did very well.
Politician's daughter right there. But no, I appreciate you saying those things, and that's very kind. And I do think it's important context for people to know about our decision to move abroad, because we don't have relationships with our family. And so I think that's an important
So it has deteriorated, and these are some of the things you saw coming.
Yeah.
When did you first start to? What was the change you recognized, and when was that? And I'm
in terms of
presuming
like if
cultural
Trump was going to
shift-
get elected or
Yeah, well, when did you feel a cultural shift? Let me give you context. The moment Obama got elected, I had the most incredible dialectic I've ever had in my life, right? Two opposing emotions existing in the same plane. And that was, we have finally become a beacon of what we say we're supposed to be, because we elected this man and his family. We are now, I at one moment felt we have crossed the Rubicon into becoming what every other country in the world seems to be, which is more accepting of people, and simultaneously went, we're fucked, because every white man in America is going to feel that they've just been marginalized, that they've just been shrunk. And that to me is when I started getting nervous. So that was 2008 for me. So
yeah, there's
I don't
a good
know
book
if you feel similarly,
called
but
White Rage that I think is very good. And it talks about how white people will, for example, destroy an entire public education system in order to hurt Black families, Black kids who are just allowed to go to public school systems,
And
the
ironically
push
hurt
towards
themselves.
charter schools.
Exactly.
And that's just, and I think I
So-
see that with a lot of kinds of oppression, is people are willing to hurt themselves. So I don't know that there was
when was it for you? When was that
Yeah.
shift where you started to struggle internally? Is
Um,
that a fair question to ask?
what I would say was, well, two things. One, politically, it wasn't a recognition of the right; it was a recognition of the left,
Okay.
that there's not solidarity. People they. I would encourage people to compromise on tactics and don't compromise on values. And I think what happens is the other way around. So people will throw trans people to the wind and say, this is what we need to do to win. Throw those values out, while at the same time criticizing and being ideologues about tactics, in terms of, I can't believe they threw soup on that painting, or I can't believe they shut down the streets, or I can't believe these college kids, blah, blah, blah. So I just saw the absolute, well, a lot of problems on the left. And not to blame individuals or people, because, we've had incredible civil rights movements in America that were violently suppressed. And we're not taught that. So I want to give us the grace of saying, there's reason why. So that to me was a big realization of the shock of there is no real left wing in any significant way, in my opinion. And then second, the big thing was when COVID began, was just looking at the science and realizing this is going to impact a lot of people's health for a long time, and we need to get somewhere that has public health care. So that was the situation that, when you talk about, is there one point? I think the realization politically, but then also the real turning point was how COVID was going to change our lives.
And you felt here we were just way too divided on the topic. Is that a big part of it?
For me, it was the private healthcare. Like, for example,
The expense.
The expense. I mean, it can just destroy you so quickly, and you'll never come back from it.
And for me, one way that I put it was, if a country doesn't shift or take seriously having a universal healthcare system or a public healthcare system after a global pandemic that so many people have either died and are suffered or are continuing to suffer from, I'm not sure if they will. I'd like to still have hope, but it definitely was.
Well, it was dollars and cents in a lot of ways. And it came true because Molly got COVID once we had moved over here, even though she was masked and vaccinated. Got COVID, and however many months later, that's when her symptoms got bad enough for her to get diagnosed with Crohn's. And she stayed in the hospital for 2 weeks. Stay in the hospital 2 weeks in America, we would be bankrupt. Right. And so it is very expensive and continues to be very expensive to move to Spain and to keep our visa process going. Because I think a lot of people think moving to another country is a one-time thing, and it's usually like an ongoing visa process that requires money and decisions.
A lot of privilege.
Yeah. I have to admit that's where, with Kathy having an EU passport and citizenship in Luxembourg, it changes the game for us completely.
Oh, for sure.
So
good on your ancestors.
Yeah. Well, and I do want to dive into something. I appreciate your saying this. One of the challenges I have with what I would call our party on the left, I don't know if you even watched last night some of the remarks from the Trump administration, but I was watching everyone on the left in the audience with stupid signs and a bunch of other silly tactics, and I went, we're never going to be taken seriously. And the challenge I have, or I wonder if you feel the same way, is that it maybe because of the household you grew up in, you can see this better. I grew up in a very Democratic household from the South Side of Chicago. If you know anything about it, the Mayor Daley's of the world.
Yeah.
Big time.
Power and problems. The more power, the more problems. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting to me is that it just feels like the left has so many more groups to appeal to. And maybe I'm making that too binary. Maybe that's my challenge. I look at folks on the right, and it just seems white male through and through. And maybe again, playing stereotypes, it just feels so it feels like it's harder as someone on the left to try to rally so many people together, because the moment you get everyone in the room, it's, well, what about my thing? And what about my thing? Whereas the Republican Party can just be a monolith, and they're going to appeal to so many folks on one or two issues, and it's over. Do you see that the same way?
Yeah, it's funny because Republicans growing up were always like, oh, the Democrats have it easier. They've got, the ignorance on their side and blah, blah. So it is always funny to listen to both sides, be like the other side, somehow has it easier. Yeah. I do agree with you that the Republicans, or right-wing conservative, however you want to look at it, have the easier job of continuing the status quo. Right? It's always easier to maintain the status quo, and it's harder to make changes because people's real lives are built up in changes. Our life, it's a messy, complex web. So I agree with you on that. I do. I think messiness is okay. I think people get freaked out about it and feel like we need to all line up to be the most powerful team. And I don't necessarily think that's true. I think you look at, particularly in terms of when you're trying to defeat the status quo historically around the world, decentralization is really helpful, actually, and having little pockets here and there. It also is this, I like to remind people, like, Trump, this time he did win the popular vote, but a lot of people didn't vote, and a lot of people couldn't vote. And by a lot, I mean more than voted for Trump. More people did not vote for Trump than voted for Trump. And so it's also a situation of, I think we keep our sphere, our spectrum really close, when actually there's tons of people who didn't even know a presidential election is going on. And you know what? Those people may come through in a big way. It's going to be the weirdos, right? That do things that, maybe don't wear deodorant, maybe, have political opinions that don't completely line up. It is incredible how vicious and unfair and dark our justice system is when you look at how many people, 98% of cases go out on pleas. People plead guilty because the draconian punishments, how many people we lock up and then don't allow to vote. Like, it is staggering. If you look at the numbers, it's like, here's other countries and here's the US.
Katie has a master's in criminology. So I just want
Ah.
to give that little context of it. That's what she was studying at Oxford.
Yeah. And so so just like, yes, we have a larger, more diverse population, but like, have a little faith in that is what I would say.
Well, and we're never not going to look diverse. We just are, the very nature of us is diverse, and we're continuing to become even more diverse, right? Finding that way to work together and not trying to change each other. I want people to have different opinions than myself, right? I want a world in which we can have different opinions.
Yeah.
And I don't know what else.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think.
Have you guys read
go
a
ahead.
book called What Happened to Kansas?
No.
Highly recommend it. It talks about how in the 1970s, when you mentioned earlier that your family and your father said the Democrats have a strong hold on X, Y, and Z, in the 70s, and early 80s, Democrats held on to rural America. And the Republicans realized that to get the votes to shift, they needed to go to rural America and talk about abortion, number one, and religious rights. And so they then started to push that agenda in the late 70s or mid 70s, 73 to 77. It's a fascinating book that talked about that was the pivot point. That became the
Southern strategy. Yeah.
Yeah. So they started really narrowing down to three things. No one respects you as a laborer, and education shouldn't be an admirable thing. Whereas when we were growing up, at least I was in the 80s, to get from here to there via education was always the route. My mom didn't go to college. My dad didn't go until he was in his late 20s. He served in the military, and his whole thing is, you're getting a degree. There was that belief that made a difference. The book says that the Republican Party went in to say, you should be proud of not having an education. And then they focused on religion and they focused on abortions to say they're taking away things from you. And that's where I'm wondering, when you hear that, how do you reshift that? Where's
well,
the
again, I'm
pendulum?
like, well, that's like good for you all. I wish I was on the side that, controlled every industry. And, when you look in the context of everything, everything from how America came into founding, how it talks about freedom, even when we had slavery, all of these things, it is really easy to say, well, they came through and they had this Southern strategy, blah, blah, blah. Well, they also had the FBI crushing people's lives. So like, let's not hype up these are political geniuses who did X, Y, and Z. Sure, maybe that's part of it. But like, let's look at where the jobs went, the crime bill, that all of these things that fundamentally changed a lot of people's lives. And speaking of education, yes, Republicans may have had that messaging, but it was also Democrats. In fact, I had a former boss who's very proud that he was in this, so-called progressive liberal, that he was part of this push on student loans. Even though now it's very clear what the result was going to be, whether you want to call it intentional, what was the end game, what was the plan, but it was pretty clear from the beginning, when part of the reason there are questions around, is a college education a good idea, are very real concerns about debt. I mean, it is insane. And then, it does make a difference where you go to college and what connections you have. Right. And so, there's that part too. And I mean, the fact that your financial aid is dependent on what your parents make. There are plenty of people out there, by the way, a lot of gay people who don't have that relationship with their parents. So it doesn't matter how much money they supposedly can pay, they can't pay. So there's like very real concrete material concerns that have been playing out, that like, sure, some like smart Republican guys had a strategy, but like, please, they were playing a rigged game, and they were also had the full power of police forces and, with them. And you have Democrats that will not say that they are not capitalists. And like, you have this continual march right. So of course, they won. It's not because they're geniuses, or it's not because they're very organized and whatever. There's a lot of other things.
Sometimes it's just that
Power continues. Yes.
And
Sorry, that was a long.
No, I appreciate the insight, because it's just more knowledge and information, and thinking about it from your background too is really helpful. Talk to us then more about the healthcare stuff and living overseas. So you make yourself, you bounce around this country quite a bit. Molly's like, we're out, dude. Let's go. You get yourself to Spain. Talk to us about what life is like there for you guys. I recognize you mentioned some things about the visa and the maintenance of staying there, and flow with whatever direction you want. And we have friends who live in different countries, and they respond with, what the fuck is going on there, right? Because they're in New Zealand, or they're right going on here.
Right.
So we don't have to go down that path. Is not necessarily, I'm not trying to beg that issue. Just tell us about your life overseas and what's that been like for you guys, because you've been there for a while.
And kind of the parts that maybe when you weren't living there quite yet, you romanticized what life would be like, and how maybe that differs from the reality, and how you're settling into that. And yeah, so go ahead.
And by the way,
Share a little
Kathy,
bit more.
this is not me trying to convince Kathy to go, or
It
her
is
trying to say, let's slow
trying
down.
to-
This is me
He's
saying,
not actually
let's
even
go.
recording this. Like,
Yep.
this is a whole
Now, tell us
front.
about your experience for real. Like what the impact it had on your relationship, because Kathy's point, I
Yeah.
can't believe everything was roses.
Yeah, no, definitely not all roses. So yeah, we were first in Italy for a couple years, and that was the first strategy, because we got on student visas. So that was difficult because we were working full time and going to school full time. It also required Katie to go to art school, and she does not self-identify as an artist. So I mean, she made a major.
Other people also don't identify me as an artist, it should be said.
We don't have to go like all the way into the health stuff, but just for perspective, it was cheaper for us to pay for school and have access to Italy's healthcare system than it was for us to be in the United States and pay for healthcare over there.
Wow, that says so much right there. Wow.
So that's why when Kay said it was really dollars and cents, that's Katie's a very logical person, but then I was probably the one that was romanticizing being overseas. I loved living in Oxford. I've always loved traveling. I studied abroad in college. And Katie, I'd say, has a more realistic and accurate view of things.
I don't know. I think I just have a opposite warped sense. So my first experiences, even being on an airplane, was through college. I went to Notre Dame, and one of their big things are service learning projects, is what they call them. So it's a lot of learning to be with the poor and to like feel their pain and be a witness, just like you would be a witness, I guess, to Christ's pain, like very Mother Teresa kind of stuff. So it was I went to rough areas of the US and of the world. And I think it made me pretty scared because I should have been scared. I should have been more scared than I thought, just in terms of like, anytime someone, I mean, we see this with immigrants getting preyed on all the time, right? Coming up through South America to Mexico to the US, when you're in an environment and you don't have, understood cultural norms or support, right? People have your back. Like, I do think I had reason to be like a little frightened of things. And I think that has carried over to here. But Spain, Barcelona, Catalonia, See, there's a whole thing about like we live in Catalonia and that's part of Spain, but they might want independence, they might not. So I want to be a good neighbor, a good immigrant, and say we live in Catalonia. I am just so incredibly thankful for the people who lived here. And this is how I also felt in the US, but here to be able to benefit from what people worked for and people sacrificed for, who made their lives worse so my life would be better. So there's a whole history here, the Spanish Civil War, and feminist movement and all of that. And so I benefit from the fruits of their labor every day. And so for me, what I think would be is I had a very under romanticized, like a very threatening view of living in another country. And that hasn't borne out. And I'm just very grateful to be here.
That's great.
Yeah.
Great.
Has the romance lived up to the hype for you, Molly?
Ours?
Yeah, right. Well, that's
Well,
the
that
next
too.
question. Yeah.
That'll be next. But has Spain lived up to what you expected it to be?
I'd say yes. I mean, I was joking that Katie's a realist, but I also am a realist in many ways. I mean, living in Florence, Italy, the first couple years really was a dream for me. And I mean, it's just it's a magical place. Visually, the architecture, the history. It was not a good fit for us as a couple, I'd say, because it didn't have enough of things that, for example, Katie does like about the US.
Rednecks don't do well in Florence. I don't.
And I mean, to be fair, it's we met very lovely people in Italy, sure. And like but like as a country, there's definitely a heavily Catholic influence. I mean, the Pope's right there. Spain has definitely been more of a compromise for us. So I still get to live abroad in a different country and get to study a different language. But there's still elements here of like there's Taco Bell here.
Okay. It's terrible here. The Taco Bell here in Spain is just, I can, anyways.
Those home comforts can be very real.
Yes.
Like those very, but might sound really small, actually made a big difference. And we definitely made the most of our time in Italy. It was, and not to make Katie sound ungrateful for not liking it, it was a very unique time to be there. We were there during lockdown.
Yeah.
So for the first year or so, we're not allowed to leave very much.
Yeah. And I mean, just here, like there's more of a sports culture, like it's much more relaxed. And part of that goes back to like back in the day when the Civil War broke out, like even the people who had money started dressing down a little bit because of those class concerns. And that still kind of bears out today in a lot of ways of like just being more relaxed about these social things. And for me, I think like women's sports is one of the strongest kind of left political movements that we have in terms of getting funding and attention and staying focused on the values. Shout out to the documentary 144. It's a documentary about the WNBA players. Recommend everybody watch. But over here, there's, women's basketball, for example, professional and all of that. Whereas there was that in Italy, but it wasn't quite as strong.
Women's sports are not at the national level, perhaps like they still have teams and things like that, but it's not the local culture, which is often what makes things really special is what's happening locally. It wasn't really a thing.
It sounds to me like you guys it took some time to figure out which parts were important to you. You had to go live in a place to realize what you appreciated about it, but also the elements that were missing. And you have to seek something else out to kind of to have a little more of what was important to you. And so landing in Spain sounds like it's been a good fit so far. And do you guys see yourself staying there? Like, is this it? This is where we're going to stay. It feels like home now.
I hope so. Here's the thing, to be very real with people, is a huge financial investment to move
Yeah.
over here. You have to sell all your stuff and deal with Facebook Marketplace, which is a whole culture you don't want to
Yeah.
get a part of.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you invest in, for us, we have our visa through a house. It's a lot of stuff. And so if we don't get our visa renewed in a year, then, we'd have to go back, and that would be like devastating financially. And so I think it's also good for people when they think about like moving abroad and stuff, is like, it's a risk. Like, we've definitely already benefited from it, but it is a large risk. So yes, it feels like home. We can do it here, all of that. But moving to a country, for me, it's hard.
Yeah.
Worth it,
Yeah.
but hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the questions I got to ask you and see if this falls in line with what you're experiencing. Our neighbor across the street, her son, she's in her 70s. Her son is in his early 50s and comes in once a year. And we've had a chance to talk with him on occasion. He lives in Barcelona. He went to college, toured Europe, landed in Spain with a job because he did an overseas study type thing, right? So 23 years old, and then happened to meet a woman there and fell in love and made it his home. He's a teacher. He's got a really good living, nice lifestyle, older teenage, college age kids. So when I saw him, I said, do you ever miss this country because of the Packers or a whole slew of things, right? And he said, I completely do, but I can never go back because I can't afford it.
Yeah.
He said, for me to start my life here, he goes, and he echoed the same thing you guys did. He said, it is a beautiful place to make a living, meaning the US. It is an incredibly difficult place to live because with me being where I am now for 20 plus years in Spain, he goes, I had a surgery and it cost me nothing.
Yeah. Healthcare.
He leaned on healthcare and housing as the two biggest things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm presuming that's the same when you say coming back would be really expensive. It's not the move of coming back here with furniture and everything else. It's establishing a career and a lifestyle again here seems to be the case.
I think it's both.
It is.
Plane tickets are expensive, like cash,
furniture. I mean,
is the dog coming back with us? I don't know.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
The dog is coming back.
Yeah. No, we've got 3 pets.
Maybe not the cats.
But just for example, Crohn's disease is, there's no cure. So
correct.
If I go back and the cost of medications, if my medications switch to, luckily I'm not on biologics right now, but those are like thousands of dollars a month for a lot of people. And then if I did have another flare or attack, that's a hospitalization. I mean, it's almost guaranteed that we would at some point go medically bankrupt if we went back.
Well, and there's no such thing as medically bankrupt. It's just bankrupt.
Bankrupt.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's both. I think, we are working professionals. We're not
retired out here.
Yeah. And so, it's just, everything's expensive and it's not cheap to live in Barcelona, by the way. Like, it is a global city. And especially with the invasion of Ukraine, cost of food and natural gas for heating our home, huge. So, right now it's the best fit for us. But yeah, it's no joke.
Pros and cons. Cons for sure. Right. Yeah.
But it does feel really good. So as a self-employed person, 30% of all the money I make goes to the government. And here it feels really good because we're taxed by Spain, and then we're taxed whatever remaining that we would owe with the US, whatever left.
We pay taxes in both countries, but it's very fair.
But it's mostly we choose to pay Spain first, and it is so nice because when I think about 30% of my work week, that's over a day, every day that I'm working to go towards taxes, and it feels really good that my taxes are going to, Spain's not perfect, but it's going towards healthcare. It's going through these things. It's not going to blow up babies in the Middle East. Like, that's a whole, I know I'm making that sound simple or whatever, but it really feels so good to know at
Yeah.
least one day a week, I am working towards putting money towards something that's building things in a good
Same
way.
thing that the neighbor across the street said. He said, I don't
Yeah.
mind paying these taxes because I have so
Exactly.
much wonderful infrastructure that works.
Yeah.
Same exact thing. Not everything's perfect conversation, but
Yeah.
boy, does it work really well. In fact, when we went to Luxembourg, it is the second wealthiest, I believe, country next to the US in terms of per capita GDP. And if
Mhm.
you've ever been to Luxembourg, free buses, free everything. They pay a hell of a
Mhm.
lot in taxes, but damn, that system works.
Yeah. And I would say I'd be remiss for not mentioning Spain, a giant colonizer country that like ruined people's lives around the world and got rich
Right.
from that. Now they also went broke.
Right.
But there is a context to all of this about why Europe has money. But Spain actually doesn't have a ton of money now, and we do
Yep.
pay high taxes compared to very low salaries. So yes, in
Yeah.
this time, in our lifetime, it
Mhm.
is definitely that case of I don't mind paying high taxes, but
Yeah.
obviously, there's all the
Yeah.
context before.
Let's do this. Let's take another quick break, and we want to talk about the two of you. How does that make you feel?
Sounds great.
Oh, feel great about that, huh? All right. Well, no, we'll take a break in
5 seconds.
That's great. Molly's counting off right now. We'll be back in, remember Chuck Woolery? Remember the days of Chuck Woolery? You guys old enough to remember that? No, they might know him. Go back
No.
to 2 and 2. They have no idea what that means. God
No.
damn it. I'll have to send you a clip.
Sorry.
Son of a.
Old man.
We'll be back in a couple minutes.
Jack, did you hear the news?
Kathy, I hear a lot of things, and some of them I even listen to.
Well, you'll want to listen to this. The Jack and Kathy Shit Show is officially ranked number 3 on FeedSpot's top 15 dating after divorce podcasts.
Wait, we're number 3 out of all the dating after divorce podcasts?
Yep, and that's just not some random list. FeedSpot ranks podcasts based on relevancy, authority, social media following, and freshness, which means we're actually pretty legit.
So basically, we're in the dating after divorce podcast Hall of Fame.
Exactly. And if you want to check out FeedSpot for yourself, it's an amazing platform that curates the best content from around the web. Podcasts, blogs, news, even YouTube channels, all in one place.
That means, so then instead of doom scrolling through a million apps, you can just go to feedspot.com, find the content you love, and actually have time to, I guess, live your life.
Right. And if you're a content creator, FeedSpot can help you get discovered by over 415,000 bloggers, podcasters, and journalists.
So whether you're looking for great content or trying to get your own work noticed, FeedSpot seems to be the place to be.
Well, head over to feedspot.com to check it out. And while you're there, make sure to find their top 15 dating after divorce podcasts list to see our beautiful, shiny number 3 spot.
Number 3, baby! That means we are basically experts now.
Well, let's not get carried away.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
And we're back. John,
I didn't say anything.
I know you were great.
That was good.
I have to get you guys clips of Chuck Woolery. He was a guy that hosted a show called Love Connection. And every time they took a commercial, he was like, back in 2 and 2. 2 minutes and 2 seconds. So
Usually, if it makes you feel better, I don't know things not because of my age, but because I was homeschooled. So like,
Oh,
yeah, so we can pretend that's the case if that
Yeah.
makes you feel better.
that's amazing.
I know too much because it's all I do is watch TV and movies in
That
my free
is-
time. And
That is not true.
and I
But
happen to remember way too
Jack
many clips.
Jack remembers everything. So he can see a movie once and recall, scenes and lines. And I'm like,
Wow.
wait, I think I saw that movie.
Yeah.
Oh, we rewatch things all the time unintentionally.
20 minutes in, I'm like, I think I've seen this.
She's like, isn't that actor in
Something
this?
about this is familiar. Right.
It's great. It's really great.
It's like Groundhog Day or something.
Absolutely.
All right, let's talk about you guys.
Yeah. So the relationship, we're a relationship podcast. What,
I
that's
don't know.
your,
It's
Are
just-
you
it was
sure
like-
you're still a relationship podcast?
Yeah.
Is that a question mark
Exactly.
kind of every time?
but I think, you guys have moved many, many times. And so you've sort of experienced the stressors in the relationship of moving and making these big life changes and work through them. But specifically, I'm curious how the move to being abroad, have you had to work through some stuff that you hadn't worked through before in your relationship? And how was that, has that made things change in a way you hadn't seen before? Or was it just par for the course? It's like, okay, we've been here before.
Yeah, I like that question. So I'm going to apply one of my philosophies towards traveling here. So this is something that
I have no idea what
I know
how she's
she
going to
is.
answer this question. So
I
well, I'm going
love
to start it
this.
and then maybe you can finish it. So one reason I liked traveling, or one thing I noticed about traveling growing up, because I was privileged enough to, was when I traveled, and especially when I stayed somewhere a longer period of time, so like 6 months or 3 months, you start to realize what shit is your own shit, like what's your stuff, and what is your environment, or like where you are.
Mhm.
And I think the same would go when we were traveling together. I think we've had a lot of practice with it. I mean, really, from meeting abroad to when we were in the States, we were on a road trip for the first 3 or 4 months for my master's research.
when we started dating, yeah.
Yeah, when we first started dating.
How old were you guys when
and
you first met?
you kind of
Sorry.
just front load a lot lot. No,
Yeah.
Yeah.
How old were we? 23? 23. I was 23. You're 22, 23.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So little.
Um,
So
and
Yeah.
what you're saying is like that traveling together really brought to the surface some of your own personal issues and kind of forced you guys to deal with that. Is that what you're kind of saying? Or
yeah, I think traveling period has an element of stress to it. So you
Mhm.
definitely get a lot of practice or reps in navigating challenges, arguing productively and sometimes not productively. There's definitely a lot of patience and grace that I think has to go on.
Yeah.
But I don't think we were, I think we were still ourselves. I think the same, we were maybe struggled with some of the same things that we usually struggle with, just with like who we are as people and the backgrounds that we come from. But what we were navigating was different. So, just a small example. Yesterday, I had a doctor's appointment. Again, so many doctor's appointments.
Yeah.
And it is a thing to not be fluent in the language of the doctor
Yeah.
that you're seeing.
Oh,
and
yeah.
and I was seeing a rheumatologist. So like definitely not fluent.
Like I can't spell that in English.
Yeah.
No. Like
and
great.
and that's just it's a new experience. It's something that we did not have to do in the States, and we've come up with a lot of tools that to try to make it easier. We're learning Spanish as fast as we can, which is very slow.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah.
yes. Yeah, no, I mean, I would say like we've been through a lot of very stressful and traumatic things before we met each other and after, we met each other and we're together. And so for me, I think our question when we first even started dating and up until we were engaged and stuff was like, can we have fun together? Right?
Yeah.
Like that was the question. And we can. So
Mhm.
that's what's worked.
That's
well.
good to hear.
Is that a reminder thing that you guys have to do? Like, let me give you a quick example. Kath and I met within 9 months. We bought this house that we live in. Within 3 months of that, we tore down the wall you see behind us. And so this was completely gutted. We were living out of a microwave. Kathy likes to say every blade of grass had to be remodeled. And the stress levels went like this between the two of us. And I remember at one point saying, You know what we do well? We act like retired people really well.
We play really, really well.
We got to get back to that because I'm losing my mind. Did you guys find
Yeah.
yourself? Do you find yourselves having to remind each other of what your strengths of that relationship is? You can't avoid. I mean, we wanted to fix this house, right? When everything you see behind us, you can't. I'm not saying you have to avoid those types of situations. How do you reset yourselves to where your strengths of the relationship exist?
By the way, I just want to say your home looks beautiful.
Thank you.
See
Love
that
that
thing right
backsplash.
there?
Totally worth it. Yeah.
Yeah, see that hood right there? Probably the biggest fight in the entire endeavor.
I don't know. We had some other big fights.
That was a custom-made hood that Kathy wanted a
Yeah.
certain way that I had to pre-build before the walls were done. So the measurements are within 1/16 of an inch. And then right above us is a light that I had everything done. And Kathy calls up and goes, "Yeah, I need that light moved 6 inches." Yeah,
And I wasn't wrong. I just want to
You
say
weren't wrong. See, that's the killer, right? Molly is also not wrong. Truly, like, I'm not just saying that to appease her. Like, she's always right. And so I just, that's part of learning, like, okay, no, she's right. Take a breath, we move.
Katie is right at times too. Sometimes.
I like how you said at times. That was great.
Molly just has
Kathy's
this.
rarely. It's funny. Kathy's rarely right, I would
Mhm.
argue. I just have to make sure she's happy.
Yeah.
That's a better way to say it.
That's
Yeah, I
important.
like that.
Yeah,
I
I
think
like that
so.
perspective.
But you asked a
did you-
question.
yeah,
and
did
we
you-
got
yeah.
off of that.
How do you?
We deflected real well.
What's that?
We deflected real well.
You did a really
Yeah,
good job.
right.
How do you reset? Like I can say for me, it's, babe, we got to go out. Like I got to get out of this shit. I
Mm.
can't do this right now. And that's even maybe just a vacation, like a quick weekend someplace. So how do you guys do that? How do you reset?
I think we do the poor man's version of that, which is I'm going to go sit in another room. I mean, really, I told her, like, literally, it was like 2 days ago. And I was like, I just need to be by myself. It's absolutely no judgment towards you. I need to go and like cry or sleep or something. And instead, like, I had a delusional, like, what if I became a teacher? Like, let me change my career. Sometimes you just got to take a little break, be a little delusional, take a nap, eat. But I mean, my thing is, I always heard, like, don't go to bed angry. Go to bed angry. Like, please, you'll wake up.
Like,
so,
get a night's sleep.
So I think
rest.
mostly
Yeah.
for us, it's just like knowing, because we both work from home.
Mhm.
So it's just, let's have
Yeah.
a minute to, and that'd be mine.
Yeah.
It's not that complicated. I also am very lucky that I'm married to a health coach.
Yeah. Right. Right.
So like the whole change skills and all of that, and roll with resistance and all of that kind of stuff, like, very, very lucky, very, very grateful.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you brought the coaching thing back up, and that's actually what I was thinking was one of the things that they say about how to be a great coach. The first thing is know thyself.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of things that make somebody a great coach, a great anything, is knowing yourself. Without a lot of the things that make you a good coach would make you a good partner. And so for me, there's a lot of things that I know that can make me feel better or more centered. And sometimes I'll either feel a lot of resistance or I just feel a little frozen in terms of like trying to get myself to do something, or and Katie helps me with that, but it's knowing what actually does work for us individually. So like Katie was saying, meditation, she doesn't like meditation, doesn't work for her. I'm a certified yoga instructor.
Mhm.
So the
I also don't really like yoga, so
yes.
Namaste, motherfucker.
but no, it's just, I just can't emphasize how great it is that, like, Molly knows, like, she's she's solar powered. Like, she needs to go out and get sun. Like, that is
Yeah.
something she needs. She usually needs to work out, even if it's, a baby workout, because, she's on medicine or whatever. So I'm just very, very lucky, not only that she knows what works for her, but I think we've been able to help each other. I think it's really important to get someone else's view.
Mhm.
whether that's a therapist or a health coach or a partner, of like helping you untangle what works for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And that's the work you do, right?
Yeah.
Right,
Mhm.
Molly? That's like your why health is based on, like reaching out to somebody for the guidance to help you essentially be your best self, right? To get out of your own way, to empower
Mhm.
yourself.
By
Yeah.
the way,
And
they've
just
done
to
a great
feel
job.
I was just say to feel better. I think there's a lot
Yeah.
of people
Yeah.
out there who don't feel good and they don't know if they're supposed to be like, oh, is this just perimenopause? Is this just menopause?
Oh, yeah.
Is this just
Oh
whatever?
gosh.
Is
Yeah.
this anxiety? And they don't really have somebody. I mean, Molly has helped me so much. This is a silly example probably, but from the moment she met me, she like bought a pillow. So I was living in like kind of dorm living at
Mhm.
Oxford for grad
Mhm.
school, and I had just the pillow that came with it and the little skinny blanket and like no food.
Imagine Harry Potter in the cupboard.
Which is fine. But like she immediately was like, you're gonna sleep so much better. I mean, bought me a pillow, bought me a blanket, this before we're dating, and just like started helping me just feel better, and has never, I've had so many different health things. Like I've had really horrible stomach pains, bend over, awful experiences, and the doctors were not helpful and kept saying, eat more fiber, drink more water, blah, blah. Well, eventually when I came over here, there were still some doctors who didn't believe me, but there was one who did and said, we're going to do a colonoscopy. And sure enough, this is way too much information for a podcast, but I was born, I didn't know this. I was born with intestines that were too long, so they're loopy and twisted. So actually, by eating more fiber, like the doctors
Made it
kept telling me
worse.
to
You
do,
were
is making it worse.
exacerbating it.
And like she never, for the years we were together, like never gaslit me or whatever. And she helped me prepare for the doctor's appointments. And
Yeah, and it's a good example where I think not being believed by doctors is common. They're amazing doctors
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah.
But the one thing that's interesting about recommendations or even like doctors in terms of best
Right.
practices is recommendations are often made for the general public. And if you could picture the bell curve, so like it's in the shape of an old-fashioned bell, the recommendations are often for the majority of people in the center of the bell curve. But there's still plenty of people that are on those ends who those general recommendations don't work for. So that's why when I say that I'm research-based, it's from my education and training and what science tells us, and then believing people when they say that that's not working for me. Because something like this could be wrong, and it's a matter of finding a doctor who is willing to listen and try things that others weren't.
And I'm sorry if it sounds like we're like looping back to an infomercial or something. Like again, we work at home together, and honestly, like if you knew Molly, I think anybody who knows Molly is like, yeah, this is just what Molly talked about, like all of this,
even before I became,
and that's why I love her. And so this is what we end up talking about.
Like my colleagues.
You guys have done a wonderful job of avoiding conversations about yourselves, though. This is great.
I don't know.
Oh no, they have been dancing around the topic. So now I'm going to make you go to the deep end of the pool.
Uh-oh.
Two things. What was the biggest, when you came out and told your family, what was the biggest challenge about that?
Yeah.
And then second thing, what has been the biggest challenge you guys have experienced in your relationship to date?
Okay, so first one is coming out.
You can go. You can
start. Oh yeah, no, yours is good.
Yours is good. I'm saving the juicy one. Oh my God, Katie's face is great right now.
She's gonna prepare for hers while I share mine.
Yeah.
Mine,
Right.
I mean, we kind of joked that I was in the closet for 24 hours and she was in the closet for 24 years.
Yeah.
So I was lucky. I was lucky that I had a relative in the generation above me who was gay, and I'd say did a lot of the work for me in terms of having my family was raised very Catholic, like being open to that. So much so that from a very young age, when people be like, "Oh, are you religious?" This is like, I don't know, like 9, 10-year-old Molly. I'd be like, "I'm Catholic, but I don't believe in everything that they say. Like, I believe gay people are great," or like I'm sure
Yeah,
whatever. So for me, I mean, my parents were really chill about it.
That's awesome.
They're
Mm.
and it was more of like I think for my dad, it was like, "Oh, okay." And then he was like, "You want to grab lunch next week?" Like literally didn't skip a beat. And then
Right.
Yeah.
my mom was probably like, "Yeah, I think I knew."
Well, didn't
Yeah.
your mom say I watched MTV and I know?
Oh yes, I mean, this was my mom trying to
That's great.
understand
Yeah.
that this is it's adorable.
That's so funny.
She watched an MTV special on bisexual people, because I'm bi or pansexual, but I would call person oriented. And so I walked into my mom. This was like a couple of weeks after I came out, watching this MTV special on bisexual people, which it's an MTV. It was very
Just making out with everybody.
yeah, it was people
Yes.
like in polygamous relationships and dating like 6 people at once. And I was like,
Oh God.
I walked in and I was like, "Mom, why are you watching this?" Just because it's so not her,
Yeah.
And she's like, "Well, I'm trying to understand." And I was like,
Oh.
"Oh, okay. Well, let me explain to you what this is actually like for me, because I don't relate at all to what's on the
To this
screen right now."
Yes. Right.
Good for you though.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's very much the switch, right? Like Molly
Mhm.
feels something, she's going to express it, she's going to do it. And
Yeah.
And there is
great
kind of a
comeback.
constant I mean, this is just a common thing for the queer community in general, is it's never just coming out once.
Right.
You come out continuously
Mhm.
because heteronormativity
it's always assumed,
is always assumed.
generally. Yeah.
So
Mhm.
so there's that's the original coming
Yeah.
out story, and then there's always like
Right.
it always continues when you
Yep.
move
The
to a
little
new place.
micro coming out as
Yep.
you put yourself into a different
Although it's
community
always
and
great.
to-
What?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go right ahead.
I just got excited to talk about Milwaukee, our shared city, because it was always great coming out there, because it was always like, "Oh, I've got a cousin." Like everybody wants to tell you about who they're, and it's so great. Like,
So
I'm
it's
like,
their
oh,
version of relating and like
yeah.
trying to show you
I
that they're
know
not
one of you.
judgmental.
I know one.
Right. Just like I mean, that happens everywhere, but like Milwaukee, it was like literally every person
Wow.
that like,
Wow.
a nurse or something. Because, we go to each other's doctor's appointments, for example, and they're like, "Why are you in here?" I'm like, well, although twice people have assumed that I am her mother,
Oh, no.
which is rough.
Or
Oh
sister.
no.
Well, sister, yeah, we went to a gay bar and they're like, "Are you guys sisters?" Like, no.
You got
Oh,
one job
no.
at this lesbian bar, and that's to assume that 2 women walking in together
Are not sisters. But it's all
Oh,
good. It's all good. That was Portland, though. That was Portland. But no,
Oh,
not that we lived there. But anyways, yeah. But
Your story,
I
Katie.
am, to be official, like I'm like 8 months older than her, so it's not
Okay.
great.
Yeah.
Which explaining how like coming out might help explain why I have gray hairs and look old.
Mm.
I mean, basically, my dad, for example, state representative, was the sponsor of the constitutional amendment in Tennessee to ban gay marriage. And I honestly don't remember how I voted on that when I was in the voting machine. I was in high school, or no, obviously not high school, college. And I honestly can't remember, because you want to support your dad. But and you also, don't want to be gay and all that. But yeah, I mean, basically, long story short, I came out actually when I met Molly. We weren't dating yet or anything, but I had a walk at Oxford, beautiful place to walk and think. And it occurred to me that, I have a bajillion cousins. I have like 30 or 40 cousins at this point, I think.
And nieces and nephews.
And nieces and nephews on the way at that point. And I just knew the odds were one of them was going to be gay. And it was like, just go ahead and make life a little easier for them, I guess.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I mean, also, there's a billion different factors. So I told my parents, and the initial reaction was my dad said, we're Catholic, so you know what that means. And I was like, he was like, that means we love everyone. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh, okay.
Oh,
Yeah, I
And
didn't
then
see
it,
that coming either.
no.
her,
I thought
yeah,
that
no, it was
lead-in
very
was going
sweet.
somewhere else.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. And I mean, I think it speaks to my parents being just excellent parents,
Mm.
excellent parents. But then, it deteriorated from there.
Oh,
Um, so,
Did you become a liability?
politically, no.
No. Okay.
Um,
I'm sorry to hear that.
me too, actually. Um, yeah, it's interesting. I think one that I saw a tweet the other day, and I thought I've seen this before, is like, stop using the political tool of being like, well, what if that person was your daughter? Because guess what? People
Mhm.
people don't treat their daughters how you think they're going to treat.
Right.
And again, my parents were phenomenal parents. There are a lot of people who are abused by their parents. There are a lot of people who are abused by other people, and their parents ignore it and enable it, and all of these things. So, when it says like, oh, would this change his political position, or would people even care if his kid was gay? And I don't really think they do. So, sure enough, fast forward, I think this is the funnier part. Fast forward to Molly and I getting married, and I invited my younger brother. So there's 5 of us total. I'm second. He's 5th. He's 8 years younger than me. He was senior in college. This is out in Denver. And so he walked me down the aisle. It was very sweet, all of that. We're out on the dance floor. Everyone is, imbibing and having a great time dancing. And he comes up to me. He was prompted by another friend. They were like, I think you need to go tell Katie what you just told me. And I'm not going to go into the full thing, but he came out to me on the dance floor of my wedding.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, it did mean a lot that it was like, yeah, of course, the numbers game, so anyways, if you don't become pro-gay after one of your kids comes out to you, God's just going to keep zapping your kids with the gayness. So
yeah,
like,
right. The universe is going to keep sending you,
figure it out.
Supposed challenges to make you confront that and dig deep. So
yeah,
I'm not trying to be cliched in front of you guys. If you listen to last week's podcast that just came out, I have a transgender daughter that lives in Seattle. And even she talks about how she felt lucky as hell to have us as parents. I am truly not trying to sound like a cliche. I honest to God don't. I understand where people can be confused, but I don't get it at the same time. Sounds like you've had some challenges still at home, and I'm truly sorry for. And I'm presuming your thought is they're doing the best they can with the way they know how to handle things.
Yeah, I have
that way,
a
but
ton of love for them, and I think about them every day, and it really hurts. But I made the decision about 5 years ago to stop talking to them because they wake up every day and they work hard on making life harder for transgender kids, women, all kinds of things. And I just, all of these issues, I won't get into the specifics, but at a certain point, it's, you can't keep enabling, in my mind, like for all the things that we've gone through and experienced, if I knew that any of the people who did those things to us, if there was somebody in their lives that held them accountable, it would mean something to me. And so it's complicated. There's a lot of factors, but part of it is being like, they don't get to just have this life where they have their daughter in it. Like I'm not trying to teach them a lesson, but I am living in reality and holding them accountable. They don't get to just keep living their lives.
Yeah,
everything's fine.
Katie, what's interesting is that I take a very heteronormative white guy approach to this answer. And my daughter even has said to me when we're walking on the streets of Seattle, she goes, anytime someone looks at me, to your point earlier, how you're constantly coming out. right?
Yeah.
It's not
Oh,
a
for sure.
thing and then the switch is over and you're done. We'll walk down streets and she goes, the looks you give people. I'm like, I don't like the way they're looking at you. And my
Mhm.
approach is I want to get right in their face and go, do you have a fucking problem? I mean, my attitude is way different.
Mhm.
Because if you're going to have a problem with this, you're going to have a problem with me. And
Mhm.
so she always has to say, you're almost
Mhm.
drawing attention to me because you're
Right.
trying to put on that masculine
And you're
protective veneer.
protective. You're very
Yeah.
protective of her.
Well, I appreciate the challenging decision you had to make. Because I know that's not easy, and I wish there was a way I could shift the fucking world on this topic because it really bothers me. I have never understood it. I was telling Kathy earlier, we were out to dinner last night. You don't mind me just indulging for a second here. We're out to dinner, and I said, I think this has been a part of me since I was a kid. This way of thinking, this underdog mentality. I had a really good friend who would brag about his watch, and I would say, buckle up for this one, guys. Ready? I would say, dude, the fact that your dad blew his load into your mom and your dad is the president of a company is the only fucking reason you got a Rolex on your watch. You haven't earned shit. You're a genetic mishap, for fuck's sake. And that has been a part of me for some reason. My mom has said since I was little, I've had this feeling. So sorry that you guys have to deal with this shit. I really am. I don't know I hope it doesn't come across as condescending. It really bothers me. And that's the part I can't get my head around, where I just want to physically bash people.
Well, I
So now let's
appreciate
segue to-
that. And I mean, for me, it's actually one of the easier things to talk about because it's a
Really?
you know, everybody knows, oh, the homophobic parent, right? But there are a lot of people out there who go through different kinds of oppression that you can't talk about without blowback. So I think part of like your freedom of feeling like you can stand up to people is also because if it blows back on you, it won't necessarily be like, okay, if your friend got mad at you for saying that, it wouldn't cause anything. Whereas if your daughter, really stood up for herself in the workplace, she could get fired, kind of thing. But I just want to acknowledge with this, I'm sure there are people out there listening. And it's
No,
just
we
really
have zero
important.
fans. I hate to interrupt you on that.
That's true. That's true.
Really?
Well, I'm going to listen to this whole thing back
All right.
and hate every
Spread the
second
word
of
then.
my
We could use a
voice.
follower.
But sorry,
Keep
go
what
ahead.
you were saying.
But yeah,
Sorry.
well, I mean, just that like there's a lot of oppression that people have to suffer through silently, and just making ourselves better listeners and standing up and believing them,
Yep.
I think is important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you two are an example of, I know all relationships are not perfect, right? But what I've witnessed in getting to know you guys is how you really are each other's cheerleader and support for each other. And like where one is the switch and one is the dial. What a wonderful, because I'm definitely, as we've established, I'm the dial, he's the switch. And that balance, again, you hate that word, but I like it because you push me, you push each other to places that you maybe wouldn't go individually, and offer that to each other, and along the way recognize the personal growth that you benefit in that. So I love your relationship. So
All right, we're going to take one last break. We've been on a long time.
oh yeah,
I promise
we
to edit this, but
we
this
usually try to
is
keep
great.
it to an hour,
This
but
is,
we've
but
had
I'm not going to let
so
it.
many fun things.
I'm not going to let it
about.
stop. It's too good.
Okay.
One of the things that we do is we have a relationship, a partnership with a company called the Skin Deep. If you haven't seen them, maybe you have, they're on YouTube. Phenomenal video series of relationships where you ask questions back and forth. And we have a relationship with them. And we end every one of our podcasts using their relationship cards, their card decks, to ask a question of each other. And so when we come back, I'm going to pose some questions for you two to ask of one another, and you're going to be the victims of
Katie
this.
already has her head in her
Poor
hands.
Katie. This is great. I think I'm really loving
Working my
Katie this
change
whole-
muscle real
Yeah.
real big.
We're pushing every edge here. So
Molly told us to do this.
yeah, she wrote all
I
these
have
things
no
down.
doubt.
Yeah. Gotta fix that dial, she said. All right. So when we get back, we're going to do a Skin Deep episode with Molly and Katie. Okay, we're back. All right. So we have card decks here, questions. And so I'm going to ask this question for you to ask of each other. Okay. So I know it sounds kind of weird, but if you had the card, you could pull it up. I could probably text it to you, but
We got it. We got it.
All right, you got it. All right. So the question is from Molly to Katie. From Molly to Katie. Molly's going to ask this question. If you could change one thing about me, what would it be and why?
Mm. If you could change
So-
one thing about me, what would it be and why?
She watches Love is Blind. And I could do it for like 7 years, but now that we're in like 10 years, I can't do it anymore because I get too stressed out because I take it too seriously. And I'm like, these people are not okay. Like so anyways, that's it. Maybe if we can pass
My
that.
God, that is the best.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say she is so interested in human behavior and what makes you do what you do that you're probably watching it going, I think I can understand why
But it's
I don't know.
mainly to judge straight people.
Totally fair. Totally fair.
She's it's like, okay, but this is not their best. Like, straight people also watch this and say like they're not okay.
Oh yeah.
But no, it's some kind of therapeutic thing that happens. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Holy shit.
so
Did not expect that
hilarious.
answer at all.
I came to be familiar with Love is Blind when my kids were over for a couple days in a row or something here at the house, right?
Yeah, they were staying with
We're
us.
still under construction. We're all piled on the sectional, and the kids are like, "Let's watch Love is Blind." And I just want to engage with my kids in anything, so I'm like, "Whatever you watch, I'll watch." And I'm like, "What is this?"
Yeah, but then the worst part about it is we found ourselves 2 weeks later calling
Yeah,
the
they'd
kids
be
going,
gone.
you believe what Sarah did? I can't believe she did that.
I know.
Right there, she has the best guy in the world, and she goes out with him instead.
Mhm.
We found ourselves getting caught up and then banging our head on a wall. I get it.
Well, see, now you realize you're just allies. Okay, you're allies, and you're just really critiquing heteronormative.
We can't stand straight
okay.
people, trust me.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God.
Ridiculous. Oh, that's so funny.
All right, Katie, you're going to ask Molly this question. What do you cherish most about our connection? And God, if she says love is blind, I'll die. What do you cherish
Ooh.
most about our connection?
What do you cherish most about our connection?
Okay. It really is picking one thing that's
Well, that says a lot right there, right?
yeah. Not to piss you off, Jack, but I do want to say the balance. Like in a lot of ways, I'm the fire, she's the ice.
You're the switch,
and-
she's the dial.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And we make a really good team.
I see that.
And we've applied that personally, professionally. We've ran businesses together. When we've worked separately, we still both very much help each other in each other's work, whether that's studying or, and yeah, it's a very, but yeah, so there's that.
So it's the codependency. Is that you?
I had said we are happily codependent. I've never been codependent.
Oh, that's good.
Yes.
Maybe I can accept it one day.
No doubt. But okay, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt,
Wait,
but that word
no,
is
it's
something we talked about.
If I had to pick one word, it would probably be safe. Katie makes me feel safe.
Gosh, I
thank you.
relate to all of that.
Mhm.
I have used those exact words in our relationship where in my previous relationship, my marriage, I had to be so independent all the time. Not to make this turn it back to me, but I can just relate. I didn't realize how independent I was. And now Jack and I spend so much time together, and he had to teach me how to, we can do that together, right? We can make that, I'll do that with you.
Grocery
And
shopping, like the simplest of
simplest of
tasks.
things. Like I never had a partner that wanted to go grocery shopping with me, that was like, oh, what should we make for dinner? I was like, what? Oh,
Yeah. I mean, I
Oh,
typically
good.
don't know
I'm
what I'm
glad.
doing in the kitchen, but I like to
So-
cut things. So
Yeah,
So,
maybe sometimes she would like, maybe some space, Jack. I think is what
Yeah.
you're trying to
just go
say.
downstairs and watch Love is Blind.
Right, exactly.
I do that too. And then but then I'm also like this, like looking out the window to make sure she's
Yeah.
still missing, like from the basement.
Yeah,
and, like, go back.
exactly.
So also, like you guys see, that we spend a lot of time together and we've worked alongside each other and we just move, and we've commented how we're so codependent, but I like it because I want it now. And it feels so, life is short and I love being this connected to this human being.
Do you guys feel this way? Because maybe this is a weird way to explain it. There's all these different attachment styles to relationships. And I can say prior to meeting Kathy, we both had other relationships prior to meeting one another and post divorce and that kind of stuff. But I found myself every time I was away from that particular relationship, I was always looking over my shoulder, checking my phone, trying to feel a connection, if that makes any sense, because maybe something was lacking with Kath. I absolutely love being with her 24/7. And then when I'm away from her, I'm not thinking about her. And I don't know if that makes any sense. So when I was with my daughter for 4 days, and my daughter in Seattle for 4 days, wasn't thinking, I wonder what Kathy's doing right now, or I haven't heard from Kathy. And that it was this wonderful detachment of I can be myself, do my own thing. And yet really missed her when I went to bed at night, where I was like, God, babe, I really miss going to sleep with you. And do you sense that same kind of, I don't know if the word's confidence in the relationship or
It's trust, right?
I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I was gonna say the
but
safety
how do you
thing
guys
comes
see
to
that?
mind, but trust is probably
Yeah, well, we never leave the house. To answer your question.
I mean, there's a reason for that, and it's because
Well, I was joking a little bit, but yeah.
we leave the house to go for walks, but that's it.
Well, she's immunocompromised, so to be clear, like I joke,
get it.
but it has been tough.
We have to live right now an isolating life, and so I'm immunocompromised. My immune system doesn't function properly, and the way to treat it is to take immunosuppressants.
Yeah.
So to suppress it even further.
Sure,
So
sure.
I'm the person that when we talk about people being vaccinated and how it's important to help people who either can't get vaccinated because
Right.
they're immunocompromised or whatnot, I'm in that group of people.
Yep.
So
what were you talking about? And what, that we never leave our house? You don't have to finish that.
Oh, I mean, I was just gonna say that's why.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, it's just a reality. It's just a reality that people with disabilities, whether it's being immunocompromised or other things, it's a very real aspect of life, and it works for us to a degree because we're both introverts, and I think that helps us understand one another, and we've always been homebodies, to a degree.
And it's just one of the worst experiences of my life was her being hospitalized, and I don't want that to happen again.
I can't imagine.
It's kind of.
I bet. You guys, thank you so much. We
can't
covered
thank
so
you
many
enough.
topics. So thank you for staying on. I mean, I think we've been talking for almost 2 hours.
It's going to work out perfect in post.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's gonna
What we always say.
It's going to be a 30-minute interview.
And
Great.
I want
Can you
everybody
just
to check. What?
Split the screen and just
Split
delete
screen?
me. This has been
No,
a huge.
Stop it.
Never. You had great.
This has
Well,
been
thank you
awesome.
for having
You
us.
guys-
We're very grateful for the opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah.
And we are truly, we both turn 60 soon. Well, not soon-ish.
Next year.
And so we're planning a trip to Spain. We're planning a trip to Spain next year.
Mhm.
I'm trying to push that up sooner because the trip to Spain should be when we move into Spain in 26. But in 25,
That's what
we
we
may try to
did.
take. Yeah, we're going to try to take a trip out there to see the country, and obviously, we'd love to see you guys. So,
Well, it sounds like another live podcast from the beaches.
how cool
Well,
would
there you
that
go.
be?
There you
thing.
go. There you go. And I want everybody to go to your website, Katie or Molly, Your Why Health. Brilliant work that you do. And I know you can work with clients around the world, which you already do, and not just local face to face, but technology has allowed us to reach more people. And I want everybody to check that out. We'll
Yeah.
have a link
Yep, for sure.
in our notes and everything. But thank you for joining us. You guys are awesome.
We end every
Thank you so
episode by
much.
putting our hands up and saying peace. So if you don't
Okay.
mind joining us, ready?
Peace.
Peace.
Peace. Peace. Very cool. Peace. Thank you guys.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you. You just listened to another episode of the Jack and Kathy Shit Show. All recording, engineering, and production provided by us. Connect with the podcast on Instagram at Jack and Kathy Shit Show for more insight into our shit show of a life. This episode is proudly brought to you by Pint Productions.
Point.